the first trailer, it was clear that Mortal Engines was going to be a big risk. A $100 million budget CGI-filled blockbuster, set in a post-apocalyptic world, looks like something we've seen done to death in recent cinematic memory. Franchises like The Hunger Games and The Maze Runner have dominated the young adult sci-fi market over the last few years. However, Mortal Engines, which is set to lose over $100 million, isn't another copycat, which is why its flopping is so tragic. Based on Philip Reeves' novel of the same name, the steampunk adventure, which doesn't follow teenage protagonists despite assumptions, was originally set to be directed by Peter Jackson earlier in the decade. But when Guillermo del Toro dropped out of directing The Hobbit when it grew from 2 films to a trilogy, Jackson had to take up the reins of Middle-earth once again. Exhausted at the end of that experience, he handed Mortal Engines over to his Splinter Unit director and visual effects supervisor on his 6 Lord of the Rings movies, Christian Rivers. And now, in 2018, it's not surprising that audiences aren't flocking to see the film that, on face value, appears to be in a genre that isn't as popular as it was a few years ago. Watch Express. Co. UK's Mortal Engines interview with Peter Jackson. According to Variety, Mortal Engines made just $7.5 million in its US opening weekend, while its worldwide total is a shockingly poor $42 million. Analyst Jeff Fox said, "This is a true Christmas disaster and a lump of coal for Universal." Aside from Hugo Weaving, Mortal Engines doesn't have bankable stars and the books aren't so well known in the US. But while the film didn't receive great reviews, it's still a decent romp that doesn't deserve such a hammering at the box office. No doubt one of the studio's biggest mistakes was releasing Mortal Engines on the same week as superhero giant Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Aquaman. In the UK, Mortal Engines had a week of previews, presumably in the hope of winning audiences ahead of the Marvel and DC tidal wave. However, the film just didn't attract enough interest and sadly now probably won't get its 3 sequels. Perhaps there's life on a streaming service. Mortal Engines